I just want to say, as a fan, man, thank you for always making such creative choices and doing such amazing work. Really, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
This
you
movie's
very
incredible.
much. Thank you.
Sounds good? Great. If you could state your name and look
Yeah.
for the camera, please.
Jake Hamilton, Good Day Chicago. Adam, it's a pleasure to meet you, man.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
So much of this movie is about a guy who thinks he knows a world pretty well and then discovers something truly shocking about it that kind of changes his entire perception. You've been an actor for a while now. You've sort of been in this system. What's something you've discovered about this business that maybe changed the way you looked at everything?
I'm like, how am I going to get out of this? I will say, and I've been really fortunate enough to work with like really great directors, and one thing that I guess I was surprised by that I shouldn't have been surprised by is how you kind of revere some of these people and assume that it's going to be a dictatorship on set, that they're going to be like, just do this, and you'll be like, okay, because you have this whole body of work. But I found that most directors, most really great directors, are researched and well prepared, and but at the same time come to set with no idea of how to do it, which I found more exciting, and how extremely collaborative they are. Yeah. They've hired you for your opinion.
Right. Is there one director in particular that really surprised you that he was like that?
Scorsese.
Oh.
He was one where...
Which that movie is amazing, by the way.
Oh, thanks. It was amazing to work on. You would expect to show up on set and be like, okay, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But he wants to hear your feedback. That's why he hired you, and sets an environment to where it's easy for you to do that, to have an opinion and not feel like that you don't rate.
For sure. Your character makes a comment in the film about how after 9/11 he changed the entire course of his entire education, which changed the course of his entire life. Obviously, you enlisted in the Marines after 9/11. I'm curious as to, do you remember the moment where you said, yeah, I'm going to do this? Because I'm assuming you had been thinking about it before 9/11. I'm curious, was 9/11 sort of the catalyst that...
I don't remember the series of events. I think, and I don't know that it was all. As actually, most things in my life have been like, okay, well, now I'm just going to do this. That was. I think it was coming. It came out of an argument that I was having with my stepdad about. I was interested and wanted to do it, and all my friends talked about doing it, and I was the only one that did. And I was swept up in in direct response to 9/11. Before then, I was having an. It was also that coupled with I wasn't doing anything. Right? I was working like 2 part-time jobs as a telemarketer, and having an argument with my stepdad, which was like, maybe you should join the Marine Corps. And I'm like, well, that didn't seem like an option, but I even just considered it. So it wasn't as clean as that, but it was greatly inspired by that event.
I love, this is one of those movies that, and I don't often say this, but is a movie that I'm going to tell people, like, you genuinely need to see this movie. It's an important film, which I don't get to say very often. And I feel like there are a lot of people that need to see this film that might not see this film. Maybe they're involved or they had some sort of connection to it one way or the other. If you could grab one person by the collar and drag them to a movie theater, throw them in a seat and say, watch this movie, who would you want to make watch it?
Oh, that's a hard... I don't know. That person doesn't exist. Everybody is the answer, just because of what the subject matter is, and that I feel like it's important, not for just how we're. Anytime you go outside of the country, or even within the country, really, you're representing where you're coming from, regardless if you've signed up for that or not. So to kind of self-reflect, even at the painful parts, I think is important for growth. Which is a hard thing to, even just personally stand by, as opposed to, asking a bunch of people to stand by. I think people who may have a preconceived idea of what it's about would be surprised, and I guess those people I'd want, that it's not fair to both sides, that it is very bipartisan, and and that it's not an indictment of the CIA. It's overall, it's, if anything, would be, challenging the key people that are in positions of authority, and that there's no accountability. How is it that everyone else is supposed to be held accountable, but those that we're entrusting with the lives of many people aren't? And I think that's an interesting question that it raises, that I in a way have nothing to do with. That is, I think, really exciting and rare.
For sure. Well, Adam, I've always wanted to talk to you, Matt. So seriously, thanks for being so kind, and thanks for being a good guy. Man. I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you for your time.
Of course.
What's happening right now? Because I would imagine at that moment, no one was doing this and thinking, oh, this will make a great movie one day. What's happening right now that in 10, 20, 30 years would make a fantastic movie?
Wow, that's a great question. I think a lot of those stories we don't even know yet, but I think they'll eventually, I hope, and I'm an optimist, I hope that they'll come out. We're living in an extraordinary time of history, and I think we're all overwhelmed with the amount of information that's available to us. And it's part of the reason I think that everyone's somewhat in a state of shock, trying to absorb what's going on. It's just human nature. There's only so much that we can take in. So that's an excellent question. I don't know that I have an answer for it, but I think that this time will provide lots of stories for the future.
There's a great quote that you talk about in the movie, which is history is written by the victors. And I was thinking about that because I also feel like to a certain degree you could say history is written by pop culture. Like a lot of things I know about Bugsy Siegel, I know from Bugsy, and a lot of things I know about 1960s New York, I know from Mad Men. I'm curious, whenever you take on a role that's a real life event or potentially going to be a certain time period, is there a certain responsibility there? Because people's perception of that history, that time period, that moment, is going to be crafted by the movie or TV show that you make.
Well, yeah, you make a good point. No one, in fact, legally can read the 6,700-page actual report. It's classified. Very few people have the time, energy, wherewithal to read the 500-page summary, which does an excellent job of summarizing said report. But a lot of people can spend 2 hours in a movie theater or in front of their laptop or TV or download it or what have you and get a very good representation of what had actually happened over that period and how our government responded, positively or negatively. And then how when the administration changed, how they then had to deal with the remnants of this, nonsense that went on. Mm-hmm. So it's a good reminder that government works when it's applied correctly, and when adults stand up and do their jobs and don't ignore things and don't put blinders on and pretend that nothing's happening. So I think that's that's the interesting part of the victors in this case.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky time to consume news, and I speak as a news junkie. Mm-hmm. So how do we curate what's coming in at us? One of the things that's important about the report is that it's all documented. So what you're seeing isn't a sort of slanted version of something. Everything in it, in fact, Dan Jones, who wrote the torture report itself, has made a documented, annotated piece of material that any journalist or any individual can go and look at and say, so there's no refuting what's in the movie, basically. We're really interested in trying to tell the truth, and in many ways the truth is very reassuring, the truth that's inside of the story. So so there's nothing artificial about that, and that's important that people know that.
For sure. It doesn't feel slanted in one way or the other, which I really thought was fantastic. There's a line in the movie that Adam has where he talks about after 9/11, he changed the entire course of his studies and changed the entire course of his life. I know that was very early in your career, and I think that was less than 2 years after you won the Oscar. I'm curious, did 9/11 change at all how you looked at roles, how you picked roles, how you decided maybe what you were going to do in this business?
No. In short, it didn't. It changed a lot of things about how I looked at our government and our role in other people's regimes and sovereignty. And I remember after this happening thinking, please let us just do the right thing. Please let us just do the right thing. And then when we started going down the course down which we went, I realized we're not doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And it was really disappointing. And I think in many ways the fact that this movie's coming out suggests that sunshine is the best disinfectant in many ways. And the more we look at it and the more we look at the choices that we made post 9/11 in a panic, basically, that we see, okay, well, at least we're trying to set right those wrongs.
Guys, I don't get to say this very often, but thank you for making an important movie. Really,
Thanks.
It was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Oh, yeah.